Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. This is your Net General, and this is my review of the Champions of Chaos DLC for Total War Warhammer 3. Now, to explain, I'm going to review this DLC by itself, as though you didn't have Warhammer 1 and 2, you don't have access to Immortal Empires. It's just how this DLC plays in Warhammer 3. So that's what I'm mostly going to cover in this review, and it's not going to be a hugely deep dive, but I'm just going to give you really my overall impressions and how I think it rates in terms of a DLC. Starting off on a positive point, the art department at Creative Assembly did a wonderful job bringing to life not only the legendary lords of Azazel, Festus, Village, and Valkyr, but also in terms of the work they did on the Marauders and the Warriors of Chaos, now their new marks and their new abilities. There is no getting away from the fact that some people have been sort of calling it reskins of existing models, and I get that. They will be using some of the same animations. They are adding new mechanics to it, but I completely understand the sort of reskinning argument. What I will say, however, is that although that is true to a certain degree, these units do add a huge amount of flavor to not only the armies of these four legendary lords, but also to the Demons of Chaos and their individual gods, and to the existing Warriors of Chaos like Archaon and Sigvald. It really allows you to build not just sort of thematic armies, but armies that really feel like they have all the aspects you would expect to see were a sort of chaos army brought to virtual life, as it were. So it really is a huge amount of thematic flavor, if not necessarily groundbreaking in terms of new units that we are still missing in the Warriors of Chaos roster. We still have some gaps there, but it does fill a niche, so really kind of a very important piece of the puzzle that needed to be there, if not necessarily the flashiest piece. But reiterating, the units do look great, and some of their new mechanics are quite fun and good to play with as well, and even mix and match in certain cases. They might have gone a bit far. Now, I'm very happy they fixed the Chaos Warriors on cavalry situation where the horses look tiny compared to the Chaos Warriors. But I think in terms of Marauders, as you can see here, they may have gone a bit too far when you consider that Marauders are still basically just normal men. They haven't necessarily been blessed by chaos or anything like that yet. They're just guys. They shouldn't necessarily be twice the size of an average human. It can get a bit ridiculous, and that scaling might need to be looked at a little bit in the future. In terms of the legendary lords, they're not just good to look at, they have a whole bunch of fun individual mechanics. Festus has the ability to Mortis Engine, as in harm any units around him, or heal any units, and you have to pick between the two with a delay in switching, which really adds a different element to him. Azazel, flying magic user for Slanesh, Village with his rechargeable shield, and Valkyr, the feisty warrior as ever, with some interesting mechanics of her own. Each of these things give them unique flavors, and they're very fun to play on the battlefield. The problems in this DLC come to me really in the campaign, however, where I'm a little bit torn. The idea now of the campaign with the Champions of Chaos is that, and the Warriors of Chaos in the larger scale, is that they now take over fortresses, which can easily help them vassalize big groups of Norscans, and then they can move on from fortress to fortress, build a base, or just take over the Norscans that are there, or they can subjugate other races as well by beating them down and taking over their territories and their armies and having them serve under them. You can sort of assign them with allegiance points, and it uses, it sort of tries to make use of a lot of the new systems we saw in Total War Warhammer 3 in terms of diplomacy and allegiance points and things like that. So it can be very interesting and in-depth, and in the wider context, it really does add a different dimension to Warriors of Chaos play in the whole. Now, one could argue that this aspect of the campaign is being moved across to the existing Warriors of Chaos DLC, but let's face it, it wouldn't have been made without this DLC, so I'm going to roll it in to being part of this DLC. The second huge aspect of the campaigns of these legendary lords is that they have to collect souls. Now, in the Realm of Chaos map, this means that they get to open portals on their way to search for Zanbaijin, to prove themselves the ultimate champion of the Chaos Gods. Now, this is a fun idea, a great concept pulled from the lore. The thing to remember about them approaching this campaign mechanic is that they'd heard the feedback from the Realms of Chaos that people didn't like the portals popping up. They've changed a huge amount of it since launch, but people didn't like the portals. There was basically one way to play. You only really needed 2 provinces. You sort of turtle down, you wait for the portals to appear, and then you just jump in and take care of the Demon Prince and jump back out again. That was it. You didn't really have to deviate from the plan a lot. And I might make a video on my larger thoughts about the launch of Total War Warhammer 3 at a later date. But just remember, it's in response to that. So a lot of people didn't like the aspect that you couldn't really, it was difficult, at least initially, to enlarge your territories, to really play Total War as you would have done in the past because of the limiting factors the campaign placed upon you. This campaign mechanic looked to sort that out by just allowing you to collect souls. Souls from kind of anywhere you want, just go for it, collect souls. And then once you have souls, you can open up teleport gates to teleport somewhere else and just collect some souls. And it opens up the sandbox. It's just like up to you. Do whatever you want to do. There's not really a lot of guidance throughout the campaign. It's just get to one point, you start at the beginning, and you just go to the end, whichever way you want to go about it. Which adds a lot of freedom for the player. But the lack of narrative signposts or sort of intermediate goals, short of just collecting more souls to open up a couple of portals before you get to the end goal, I think makes the whole campaign for me slightly monotonous. And as such, you get a campaign that isn't particularly long and is a little bit dull, at least from my perspective. In Total War Warhammer 3, I felt that the narrative drive of the campaign was probably the strongest that has been done in the Total War Warhammer series. Now, in order to achieve that, they very much tightened in the restraints. So, I think to play the Warhammer 3 Realms of Chaos campaign once was the first time was a great experience. The problem was, at that point, with the game, they released it without Mortal Empires being a couple of weeks away. So you didn't have an alternative. So the repetition of doing that highly focused narrative campaign got tired and people got sick of it. If they'd released Immortal Empires a week or two after the release of Total War Warhammer 3, as I probably still believe to this day the original vision was, but they rushed out the release of Total War Warhammer 3 with a 7 month wait before Immortal Empires, and it just turned everyone against the main campaign. And this is a reaction to that wait. So instead what you have is a small sandbox, which, now that you have the larger sandbox available in Immortal Empires, I think very much takes away from this experience. Now, for people with only Warhammer 3, maybe this is a breath of fresh air, a way to play through the Realm of Chaos maps, just without having the rush of the whole Realm of Chaos campaign to deal with. In that case, it's a bonus. But you have access to Immortal Empires, it really makes this campaign pale into almost insignificance, in my humble opinion. Now, a good point of this campaign is the idea that the Chaos entities can teleport around the world map. There's a couple of units in Immortal Empires who can do that, like Oxyotl and a few others, but it would have been nice to maybe see that aspect of the Zanbaijin campaign transferred over to Immortal Empires, which unfortunately it isn't. That might change in the future, who knows, we'll have to wait and see. But I just think the open sandbox nature of it really is detrimental to the effects of the aspect that Immortal Empires now comes out at the same time. Good option if you don't have that, I suppose. So that's something to consider. The Marks of Chaos was good. The teleportation I liked. The soul system I liked a bit. It's okay. I like the vassalization and subjugation system for the Warriors of Chaos now. So overall, there's stuff I really like, but just when you put all of those elements together in the sandboxy-like campaign for the Realms of Chaos, when I think perhaps it suffers from you knowing there's Immortal Empires out there. I'd much prefer, why not just go and play Immortal Empires, is my argument. So if you were just to get it alone, there's a much better experience out there if you had the other two games. And I think that maybe what in my mind is making me think of this DLC rather negatively. But let me put it this way then. Okay, I think by itself, in Total War Warhammer 3, 6 out of 10. With the other demon factions in Total War Warhammer 3, because the new troops do go into that, and they add a lot to those different factions, let's bump that up another point to a 7 out of 10. In Immortal Empires, with the new mechanics, with the Marks of Chaos, I kind of wish the teleportation was in Immortal Empires as well, but in Immortal Empires, 8 out of 10. Let me put it that way. Yeah, in Immortal Empires, these guys are great. If you get the DLC and you have access to Immortal Empires, if you just have Total War Warhammer 3 and you're thinking about getting this, it will give you a different way to play. It will get you off that Realms of Chaos campaign. So that in itself is probably a huge bonus for you. But for me, just so much more enjoyable in a different context, the aspects of this DLC, rather than just in Total War Warhammer 3 by themselves. So, a 6 to an 8 out of 10, depending on those circumstances, guys. I know that was a slightly garbled review, but, I'm just going off the top of my head and my impressions of the Champions of Chaos DLC so far. If you guys are getting into Immortal Empires, many happy adventures. The map is incredible and huge, and it's a great deal of fun. But as always, guys, a huge thank you for watching, and I hope to catch you all on the next one. All right, guys, bye.